David Buttifant, welcome to the Dylan Friend podcast, my friend. It's been a long time in the making. I've wanted to get you in for a very, very long time, so it's an absolute honour to have you in the studio.
Good on you, Dylan. It's a privilege to be here, mate.
Mate, we've actually known each other for a long time. There's a few connections there, but obviously one being you were the high performance manager at Carlton when I was there. Obviously came over from Collingwood with Mick.
Yep.
We had some good times.
Yes.
You definitely tested me with a lot of stuff. That some of these things still live in my mind. There's a little man still talks to me a lot sometimes. But in all seriousness, mate, you've had an incredible impact on me, and I think it's we were chatting off air before, but some of the things that I've still taken out that I've learned from you has been awesome. So it's a blessing to have you on the show.
Oh, it's very nice of you to say that, Dylan. Thank you.
Mate, so much to get through today, and obviously your backstory and your career speaks for itself. It's so successful, so many things that you've done. But I think always a good place to start is at the start. Young man, played 2 games for Richmond, fullback.
I was midfield.
Were you midfield, were you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeez, that doesn't... 2 games and midfielder.
Yeah, I was
so
midfielder.
were you just no defensive transition back then? Or
Probably not. Couldn't find the footy.
what was... maybe that's why I thought you were a fullback. Because
one year, I played fullback at Box Hill for 1 year. It was our fullback actually did an ACL, so I had to play fullback 1 year. That's the only time I played fullback in my life, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, must have been very good. Finishing your footy career, 'cause I suppose that's when things really started working your way in your career.
Yes.
Was the passion always there for sports, high performance? Were you studying while you're playing? How did that all sort of transgress?
Well, it's interesting, because I always had a love of sport, because at a very, very young age I was involved in sport, the athletics and football as a family, and a very active family. So I had a real, kind of intrinsic motivation to be involved in sport, and really kind of fortuitously, I had the opportunity, to be involved, at an AFL level for a couple of years, which is great. I loved that. Then I became a PE teacher, which loved sport, but it didn't last too long, mate. It only lasted 3 years. But it was, teaching out in Broadmeadows at a school called Theory College. It's now known as Benola, but I really enjoyed it. Then I really went on to do some more postgrad stuff in exercise physiology. And then basically what happened from there, I got exposed to elite sport. And then I had the opportunity, while I was doing my PhD, to get some work at North Melbourne Football Club in the mid-90s. So it's a bit of luck at the right time, right place, and that's kind of what happened, really.
I don't really believe in luck. I think that there is, you put something in your mind and you get there, and I think that you're underselling that a little bit. But it's incredible, because I think at that stage when you were at North, early 90s, would I be wrong to say that was when football wasn't still full-time then? Was
that's right. Yeah,
was it still part-time?
No, that's right. It was probably before you were born, but I started in 94 and it was part-time.
Yeah.
I mean, you're paid part-time, but pretty much you're doing 40, 50 hours a week. And then that was my first year. In the second year, they made that transition. Look, we want our athletes, our players, to become more full-time, more committed. That was 96, we went full-time. And really, they're a very, very successful club. They played so many preliminary finals and grand finals and so forth. So then went full-time 96, which thoroughly enjoyed. And, I was very grateful for people who gave me an opportunity there. Jeff Walsh, obviously, he was the footy manager at Collingwood. He kind of initiated, and then Dennis gave me a wonderful opportunity too. So I'm forever grateful for North Melbourne Football Club.
What was it like back then? I suppose that was when it was a very successful time. You had players like, the Duck running around, Wayne Carey. What was it like, working with him on a high performance level?
It's interesting, because North Melbourne back then, you probably would remember, but they used to train underneath the Arden Street kind of stand. And look, they were poor as church mice. Really, they didn't have many resources, and there wasn't a lot of staff, but they did have a very strong culture, and they were really committed. And look, really didn't have many full-time staff as well, So basically it would have been, I reckon it would have been, in the football department, be lucky to have more than 6 full-time staff in that very first year I started. And then it kind of progressed and got bigger. But really things haven't changed. They're the same people, different names, different faces, but they're the same people. They're intrinsically motivated to compete, to play the highest level. Footy's changed enormously, athleticism has changed, but still those great athletes then would still do very well today, and this is 25 years later.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. I think when you're in a footy club, you think, this group's special, it's, this is what's going to happen. But at the end of the day, it's a bunch at that time, and you're sort of just blessed to be a part of it while you're there.
Yeah, absolutely.
How did the transition part take into Collingwood? Because I suppose David Buttifant, Mick Moldhouse, early 2000s to late 2000s, that was an incredible part of, your public life, I suppose, when you were high performance manager of the biggest club in Australia. Some incredible things, happened. You were a pioneer in bringing high altitude training to AFL. How did that start? What was the initial conversation with Mick? Was it with Collingwood?
Yeah, it was interesting because when I was at North, I had an opportunity in '98 to go up to Homebush for the Sydney Olympics as the senior sports scientist there, which I thoroughly enjoyed and loved it, and it was really good. Once the Olympics finished, I had 4 kids. I wanted to head back to Melbourne, so my wife from Melbourne, so I wanted to connect with family and friends again, which is really important. And when it finished, actually, I had a few phone calls. I had a few phone calls from different clubs, but Dean Laidley contacted me and said, "Look, Butters, there could be an opportunity coming up at Collingwood. Would you be interested?" Yeah, why not? Of course. So I caught up with Mick Moldhouse and Neil Baum, and really I thought, oh, this is the club I want to go to. I could really sense this, like a connection. I grew up in the northern suburbs. I grew up in North, good family in Collingwood. I wasn't a Collingwood supporter, but I just felt the connection, and I thought, no, this is a club I can actually move into and feel part of. So Dean obviously gave me the opportunity to actually, say, look, have a chat to Mick and see what they can offer, and there could be some opportunity there. So I took it.
Well, it did turn out for the better, because I suppose that was a formidable relationship, and someone I suppose you've been extremely close with since, working with you at Carlton. I know how tight you two were, and how, on the same level just about things. I suppose he, put a lot of trust in you. You put a lot of trust in him in terms of players and whatnot. But I suppose that had to be built over time.
Yeah.
What were some of the early days like, I suppose, and when did things start changing that like full professional way, as you were saying, in terms of like, okay, let's actually start, pushing the limits here. Let's start going on some pre-season camps. Let's start looking into high altitude training. How did this all come about?
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, obviously, cutting my teeth at North and having the opportunity to do that, and then going away from football and then immersing yourself into different sports and, looking at what other countries do as well from a sports science perspective. I was able to bring that kind of collateral back into the club. The great thing about Mick, and he was so innovative. He was always open to different kind of techniques. So quite innovative, but also too, it was kind of collaborative. You can challenge as well, which is really healthy. And it wasn't just Mick. There's also too, Barmy did that. Walshy did it as well. They asked the right questions and challenging. It was kind of like, and that's what high performance is about. You're actually prepared to challenge one another. You can talk about mistakes, but which is really healthy. So, but to do that, you've got to have that trust. You've got to have that kind of psychological safety, and which I think we had after a while. When we missed out in 2002, 2003 and winning the flag, and we had to rebuild, and then they were kind of open and receptive to new techniques, and Eddie was as well. He wanted to win a flag. We all did, really. So what was it that we needed to do? We couldn't follow other clubs who were winning. We had to kind of break out and do something that we owned, we believed in, that's going to have an influence on shifting our performance.
It's unbelievable, because I think, at that time, no one was doing anything like that. Camps had been a thing for a long time, but I suppose actually taking not only a football team, but like the high, the coaches, the support staff, probably those camps, I was lucky enough to go on a couple with you at Carlton. It's nearly 50 people would come on a 36-hour trip across the world.
There's always that nervousness. And it is just a relief when you get that plane back on the tarmac, when you land back from a trip. Oh, God, we've got everyone back. And I always had that element of nervousness, and going there, which is it's quite good for athletes too, not knowing what it's going to be like in altitude and some of the stuff that we did. It's that uncertainty, really, but it's in a really kind of undistracted environment. So there's perceived risk as well associated with that too. So, yeah, you're right. It does. It's kind of, but in a way, that's what sport. You've got to have a go at different techniques that can actually have an influence. As long as, look, the central priority of the well-being of players is crucial. It's crucial. But it reminds you back at, they were first introducing ice bars at North Melbourne in the mid-90s, and Darren Crocker, who you know, what are you doing this for, Butters? He looked at me as though I had green horns growing out of my head. And I said, come on, this has been going for a long time. It goes back to the Greeks doing the hot bars. And anyway, so that's where we started doing the kind of the cold therapy stuff and cold water immersion. And then obviously down at Kerford Road, Corey McKernan still has a go at me at that. He goes, Butters, you were mad then. I think you still are mad, but you used to get us in the water all the time, and it's really just kind of that evolved. But if we don't do those things, how do we actually improve performance and go to the next level. So
I think that's something, looking back now, that I'm so happy with it, that I got to experience with you, and I realise now probably the benefits of it was, at the time when you're a player, you think, fuck, why is this bloke making us do all this shit? Like, why are we going out? Like, why are we climbing this mountain? Why are we, swimming out in the ocean at pitch black 5 a.m. around Kerford Road? But it is that mentality, and it's making yourself uncertainty. And I think that's something that I really learned from you, is the way you did things. And this is probably thinking about when you first came to Carlton. You always know people from other clubs. And the one thing you'd be like, oh, what's Butters like to the Collingwood boys? And they'd say one thing, don't ever ask Butters what the session is that you're doing. So there was this rule.
Did they really?
There was a rule before you even got there that was, when we do a running session, you would, get everyone on the line straight after. You'd tap into your psyche, and you're like, boys, on the line. And we'd just be standing there going, fuck, like,
what is
we
this?
could be out here for 3 hours. We could be out here till tonight. Like, I don't know how long this is going to go for. I don't know when we're going to finish. I don't know how hard we're going. And it was the most uncomfortable feeling in the world. So why, I know I probably just wrapped it up then, but why did you do that?
Well, that's a really good point. There needs to be that element of vulnerability in us, and I think that when there is that kind of perceived risk and the uncertainty, life's like that. We don't know what's ahead of us. So really what it can do is that you can actually conjure up, ruminate, this is what can happen, and actually anxiety can come upon us. However, when we let go and we surrender, just go for it, it does change your mindset. And that's how we build our resilience, in a way that, okay, this is okay. And once you have that trust, then you can actually go that next level. And what it does, when you overcome that challenge or that adversity, it becomes a wonderful reference point. When you're experiencing that real discomfort, the physiological stress that you're feeling, how I've overcome that. So next time it comes, you've been there before. So it's not foreign. So that's how we can kind of raise the bar or build our capacity. So that was kind of like, it was a mindset, but it was also a physiological thing we're trying to change and challenge as well. Because what happens is when we know, there is a kind of a threshold. There is an efficiency in us. But when we don't know, we can kind of break through that at times. And there is a fine line as well, because you don't want to injure players, but there is that precipice. That's why it's elite. That's why it's high performance. That's how records are broken. You've got to push those boundaries at times. And really, the mind and body are so closely connected anyway. So that's what we're doing and applying.
For sure. I think that is probably the biggest thing about those trips that I look back now. And, for reference, some of those trips we went back to Arizona, Flagstaff, and we climbed Mount Humphreys, which is, I think, is it 6,000 feet?
It's actually, no, it's about 13,500 feet.
Okay.
It's nearly 3.5.
Yeah.
It's 3,700 metres or something.
Yeah, it was. And that was honestly one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And you could say, why are they going over there to climb this mountain? It's not going to help them play footy. But that was probably more just for our minds than anything.
Of course.
Like that was challenging. And I thought that was the hardest thing I've ever done until the next day when we walked down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Yeah. And that was fun. That was like, I thought, this would be a lot easier. Yeah. So just for reference for everyone, 36 hours fly over to Arizona. Yeah. I think it was a 6-hour bus then to Flagstaff, a little town in the US. Yeah. It's snowing. Yeah. We climb this mountain. Yeah. How long would that have taken?
6 hours.
6 hours in the snow. Yeah. I've never seen snow before in my life. That was the first time I'd ever been to the snow. Yeah. And the whole time we're stopping, putting, high altitude. And making sure we're okay. Yeah. We get up there, amazing feeling. Think, okay, good, the camp's done now. We're done with this hard stuff. Yeah. Until a meeting that night, thinking we might be getting on the beers and celebrating, saying, boys, get at the bus, 6 a.m. in the morning, we're going to the Grand Canyon. Yep. So we get to the Grand Canyon, walk down, which we thought, would be a nice walk. Yep. After an hour of walking downhill, it's actually quite tough.
Yeah, it's up on the quads.
That took, I think, nearly 7 hours to walk back up or down and up together.
It's really at a walking pace. It's about an 8 or 9 hour kind of return trip.
That right now, if I look back, was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Yeah. Because we got down to the bottom and thought, fuck, that was pretty tough. And then you look up and you go, fuck, I've got to get back up there. Yeah. And the whole time you're walking, you could be walking for 3 hours and it doesn't look any closer. Yeah. And you you really, that's when you dig deep and you have to really just think, fuck. Yeah. And I know people don't understand. They might think walking up a hill isn't hard, but was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Well, that in itself, because that becomes that wonderful reference for you, because when you are exposed to challenging times again, you go back to that. And what happens is that, hey, I got through that. I can get through the next one. Bring it on. And really, it is a mindset. It's kind of okay, I don't know what I'm going to feel, but you go back to those reference points. And we have reference points all the time in our life. And when you overcome those challenges and give that, that, I suppose, that experience, it becomes really quite fulfilling, but it cultivates your strength in yourself as well.
Yeah, the belief in yourself you get from something like that, it's not something that you forget. You know that you've done it and you've ticked it off.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. It's like when athletes get seriously injured, you don't wish that upon anyone, but it can be a blessing at times. We can actually learn from adversity. We can turn kind of adversity into an advantage. And a bit like COVID. I mean, some people will come out of COVID doing really well. They can turn it around. We kind of change our narrative around that.
Just on the training camps, one more, because there's a few more camps, I suppose. You did millions in your time.
Yeah, did a lot.
Can you talk us through some of the camps that I think probably you thought were most challenging that you've ever been through or done with teams or even with resilience builders that you're doing now? Does anything stand out that you go, fuck, that one was the toughest camp we've ever done?
I'd have to say at the end of 2009, going to 2010 pre-season, I'd say that was a pretty tough pre-season for the boys. I think that following year as well, we had really tough conditions. We had minus 35 conditions. We had times that, when we're climbing, there's 100-kilometre winds, going across the saddle, which you've walked across, really testing. But what was fantastic to see in that trip is some of the stronger leaders supporting the younger ones through, really uniting, galvanising the group, because they've been there, done that. Whereas the first year players, young guys, have never done that before. So that it was their turn to actually, okay, I'm going to contribute, I'm going to help do some lifting here and share the load. And seeing that, I think, wow, because it was tough conditions, hip height at snow at times, walking through that and climbing into altitude as well. So I think it became, and we used that as a reference point going into, the 2010 grand final. We kind of talked about that a lot. What did we learn? And really, the next day we trained in the dome, the NFL football stadium, for 2 hours. And the boys trained at a really high rate and high level of intensity. What it demonstrates is that, hey, you did a climb for 6 hours, 7 hours. Then the next day you've trained. Now we played a drawn grand final in 2010. We've got 7 days to turn around. This is going to be a walk in the park. Yeah. So it became a reference point, a really strong reference point for them. And I said, you remember doing the, Humphreys Peak? And they said, yeah, that was shit, but I hated it. But I said, but remember what we did the next day? They said, yeah, we trained really well. Great intensity. Mick got them going. Boys are up and about. And really, we spoke about that. So look, okay, you did that within 24 hours. We've got 7 days to turn it around. We're in another grand final. So basically it becomes reference points for you when you've had challenging times. Or you go the narrative, oh God, we're going to play another grand final, we won't be ready. So it's really that, going back to what you said before, it's that choice. We're free to actually make the choice of how we respond to circumstances.
When a lot of people speak about that drawn grand final, after the game, I think St Kilda were actually in better shape. Like they had less injuries, I think, than Collingwood. There was a few guys that were banged up. I think, Pendlebury was sick.
Yeah, he was sick.
There was a few other guys. You had a change in the team as well. So from the outside, it actually looked like you were more unsettled, I suppose, than what St Kilda were.
Yeah.
But going back now, like to hear that was what you referenced back was the pre-season and recovery through that week to get ready.
And it's funny because, I don't know what St Kilda did, but I know where we were at, we were very comfortable where we were at. We felt that reassurance and we had that kind of belief that, we're going to go out in that game and whatever happens, we'll do the best we possibly can. And I think the players really believed that. And if St Kilda beat us, well, they were too good on the day. But on that day, we're going to do everything they possibly could, squeeze themselves to the point, well, okay, we're not leaving anything in the tank. And there was that kind of belief in them. I think you could sense it. You could sense it in the staff, you can sense it in the players as well.
What were some of the other things, I suppose, that led, do you think, to that success in 2010? I know there'd be a million things, but was there anything else that you think at that time you were doing differently that other people weren't doing, or that led you a little bit better than what other people were sort of transitioning?
Well, I think what it was, we were building, obviously from 2006, made a final, 2007, made a preliminary final. There was a whole host of things, Mick had obviously got the team kind of to a position where there was a real efficiency amongst them. They really knew the game plan well. They knew each other. They had trust. I think rotations was definitely having an influence as well.
And was that the one that was from the hockey?
Ice hockey.
Ice hockey?
Yeah. So really Mick, he was very innovative in this whole approach, but so was Guy McKenna. Really in a way, we were chatting and said, look, we've got to get him fitter. I said, yeah, we're not going to get him fitter now. It's too late. It's halfway through them. He goes, well, if we don't get him fit, we won't change their intensity or somehow we'll just fall into the finals type of thing. So then we looked at other sports and we came across ice hockey and they change on the fly, and we know that the frenetic pace, the intensity, the speed is high. So we thought, why don't we do that? Obviously that will influence our efficiency, and we started trialling it. Most clubs were averaging 40, 50, and I think in the West Coast prelim, the final before the prelim, we had 110 rotations that day, and that was a drawn final over there. And then the next week we played against Geelong, and we're coming at them, and they were just too good and they won. But we realised that formula worked. That we were able to sustain the intensity, had a positive influence on some of the players. Dane Swan's a typical example.
Yep.
He's a powerful athlete, but just to rotate him frequently to keep his intensity levels up made it very hard for players to tag him.
It's unbelievable, and I think I don't know if you'll take credit for this, but you've probably single-handedly fucked the AFL's cap rotations. I think that's probably your fault. You can probably put your hand up for that.
Well, that's actually interesting. Kevin Bartley's hated it. I reckon a lot of people hated it, but really in a way, the game was at a high pace, and I think for the protection of players as well. I think that, who really cares? You see people rotating on and off. As long as you're getting good quality of game and you can sustain.
I never understood why they actually banned it. Why was it so wrong to do?
Good question. I don't know. Really,
because you were too good, because they were too fit? Or?
Well, the thing is, there's no research to say, well, okay, is it aesthetically? We'll come out and say it's aesthetically. I'm with you. I don't know. What is the reason why? Really what we found in our research, it actually mitigated some of the injuries because we were able to control the load. You could actually increase longevity of players playing as well, So now it becomes what they're hoping is decreasing the rotation. The game will open up, but things like decision making may be compromised. Skill level, they can't break the lines, they're not as explosive. Is it going to open the game up? We don't know. It's kind of like they're based on inferences. It really should be based on objectivity, on data. This is what's happening. Okay, well, yeah. Protect the player's well-being. That's what's really important. But don't say there is an injury related. There was never an injury kind of related kind of correlation there at all.
No, and it's look, you've obviously got the credits to talk about this. I don't at all, but I just get really annoyed when I find sometimes in AFL that we just change a rule, and then we change a rule because we've changed another rule that has to suffice the rule that we changed in the first place.
Yeah.
You look at, I think soccer, for example, they've been around for a lot longer than us. They've had 3 rule changes their whole time.
Yeah.
As soon as someone gets good at something here, it's like we cap it because we don't want them to. That's just what happens. That's innovation. That's yes. What people are there to do.
And they will, and good coaching will do that. They'll find methods, a way to actually manoeuvre their team around that to get that advantage. And that's what they do. They jump ahead. And I don't think clubs get concerned about the rule changes so much. They tell us what they are, what's going to happen, so then they can start to prepare and plan in pre-season and put it into their kind of, their programming.
I want to ask you this, and I hope you can give us some enlightenment, because I do speak a lot about, some sessions that we used to do, and I won't mention again, but there was a Kerford Road one, which I will reference in another episode if you want to hear the story. I've just told it too many times. What are some of the biggest punishment sessions that you've taken or put the boys through in your time?
Oh, jeez. You make me feel like an ogre, like a tyrant.
No, but these are warranted by you. They're not just for no reason. They're very warranted.
Yeah, and really punitive. Obviously, one of the things of most clubs, if player slips up, then most of the whole team would go in.
One in, all in.
Yeah, yes. Kind of thing. And that's great, because that's you're supporting each other. Really, I'm big in rewarding positive behaviour, not actually acknowledging kind of but there was some therapeutic benefits. Look, when we go into the water and it's dark, fear is upon us.
Fucking oath.
Yeah, and what happens, fear is natural. You kind of feel it. And basically you need to embrace it. But panic is deadly. So it's kind of like, okay, all right, we know what's going to be in front of us here. What do we need to do? You can get the narrative and you're feeling, quite negative about it, or no, we're going to do this together. We're going to support one another, help one another, be team orientated, and so on. So there is more of a benefit from that. It's not the reason someone rocked up late or whatever happened on the weekend. It's really, that's only a very, very small part of it. This is an opportunity to actually do something collectively that takes you out of the comfort zone. And by doing that, becomes a reference point. Hey, we got through that. You talk about have a laugh and you're still talking about it today. Oh. You're probably bagging the shit out of me for doing it. Don't worry, well, probably other hundreds of players would do the same. That idiot, what he was doing, the jellyfish and so forth. But look, you have a laugh and you come away, how do you feel? It's actually... It's a process you do, but the outcome is quite positive, really.
Yeah, definitely. No, I look back on that now, and I do really look back on it fondly, because it is one of those things that I'll never forget. And I think something that I have, gone back to is how cold it was, how dark it was. But yeah, in terms of fear, like you are petrified. Like you don't know what's going to happen, and like you said, you don't even know when it's going to finish.
Yeah.
So when it's not in your control, I think you've just got to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's exactly what it is, and I think it's a kind of a heightened level of mindfulness, really doing cold water immersion, and you kind of like letting yourself go. It's like training at a high level of intensity. So what it's teaching you is some really wonderful benefits that you may be in a really difficult time and you're feeling a lot of discomfort, but this will pass. Reminding yourself of this will pass. I can get through this, and it's focusing into the now when you're there. Okay, I've got to start swimming. Probably more breaststroke. You don't want to put your head on the water. It's pretty cold. But yeah, look, I think from a purity, that was probably one of the tougher ones we did, midweek stuff. And you always had to kind of train and load stuff there that you kind of get players to do. But also mindful too. You've got to look after their well-being as well. Yeah. I don't know the point where I scar them, they would never come back and talk to me ever again. So therefore I had to do it myself, so I was never going to get them to do it, and I wasn't doing it.
So. And to your credit, you were always actually doing these things with us as well, which I found even weirder that you'd want to do that.
Well, I kind of thought I can't get people to do it if I'm not prepared to do it myself. Yeah. So I'm really big in congruency. You got to walk your talk, and I think that's really important. I think not just in sport, but I think leadership, life as well. If you're asking people, would you consider doing this? Well, do you do it yourself? Yeah, I do. I do invest myself into that.
Huge. No, it's so true, mate. And I do look back on that and think that it has taught me a lot in my time. But I want to talk about Mick, because Mick is such a big figure in AFL, and I think he's polarising. But for me personally, he was probably my favourite coach I've ever played under, just because of the way he was about it. Like, you knew where you stood, he was honest, and you knew what was expected of you. Yeah. No one probably knew him better than you in terms of that working relationship. What do you think made him such a good leader?
Gee, that's a really tough question. I think he had a lot of wonderful traits, in getting the best out of people. I think that he was able to kind of inspire change in people. He understood their aspirations and their dreams, and he knew, and he didn't treat everyone the same. Like, he knew which stimulus to provide at the right time for the people, and he was a kind of a wealth of knowledge in a lot of other areas as well. Not just football, anthropology, history, and so forth, military history. But he had this ability to kind of get people to, pretty much build their capacity. Really, that's what he was doing, and I think that's, for someone to coach that many games, you've got this wealth of experience. He's got the knowledge, he's got the experience. Obviously, that gives you the wisdom, and he had that, So I think that, and he got a very strong constitution. And Mick walked the talk, and that's one of the things, from family, got a really strong moral compass, strong values, loved his family, very supportive, very loyal. So it's kind of, when you see those traits, you see those actions, it influences people. I mean, you become a byproduct of the culture you live in. Yeah. That's what happens, I reckon, and they saw it. Mick was firm. He wasn't going to sugarcoat things. He didn't need to sugarcoat. He was direct and firm. Your coach is there to drive performance, and that's what he did.
I think one that's, just to remember that speaks volumes of that was when we did do Mount Everest, and when we did do...
Mount Everest.
Mount Everest, sorry. What's it called again?
Humphreys Peak.
I've blocked it out.
That's right.
Humphreys Peak.
Yeah.
He would not let anyone pass him.
No.
Not that I could anyway, I couldn't keep up with him, but he would be leading the charge. I'm not sure how old he was at this stage, but he would not let any of the boys pass him, because he goes, I'm the leader of this team. Yeah. I've got to take them up and set by example.
Yeah, he was great at doing that. Great.
He was unbelievable.
I know, he loved it. Just chewed it up.
You also co-wrote a book together.
We did, yes.
The ox is slow, but the earth is patient.
That's it. Yep.
I need to read this. What's the book about?
Well, actually, Mick and I, we kind of got together and said, look, both of us had an interesting journey. Why don't we just do a book that we could just give to our family and friends? And so we kind of we spoke to two different publishers. They said, look, it's a great idea. Who's the book for? So basically for, players, coaches, teachers, managers, family, parents, children, whatever. I said, great, okay. So then we started putting a bit of an idea, what's it going to look like? Storytelling, footy stuff, life stuff, and then pretty much the tools about how we can improve ourselves as well. So, and that's what we do. The tools that we've used in our own life and our own experiences, that's put us in good stead. And also sharing stories we've seen in players and some of the things that they've done as well. So it's kind of, there's a spiritual element to it as well. So have a read, mate. For a Collingwood book, it's I've been told there's not enough photos in there. So
I will definitely check that out. No, honestly, we will. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes, guys, as well, if you want to check that out. So make sure you get a copy. But mate, I think at the moment the amount of wisdom that you are giving us today, everyone will be all over it.
Thank you.
You spoke then about players, and I know it's a team sport. I know it's about the collective, but I suppose in your role, there's got to be some players that have stood out over the time. Does anyone stand out in terms, that grit, resilience, work ethic that you've been like, well, I've pushed this bloke and he doesn't give up?
Yeah, it's interesting. You see different players, and some players don't have the talent as other players. But what they do is they make up with that word you mentioned, that grit. Is that they're so intrinsically motivated to get the best out of themselves, and they go off and play 200, 300 odd games. They're strongly committed, and they do everything they can to get the best version of themselves. Now, whether it's 50 games or whether it's 350 games, you see it. You see it in people. And when they first come in, you think, oh, he won't play a lot of footy. But all of a sudden, they end up playing a lot of footy. They might become All-Australian, might become captain of the club and so forth. It's really difficult to highlight and identify people because it is a team sport. And you see players, what is it, the ones who actually can kind of get the best out of themselves? That's a question I get a lot. What are the traits about them? I reckon they've got a vision. I really think they've got a vision of where they're going, and they're prepared to cope with any kind of discomfort to get to that vision. They just keep going back to why. Why am I here? What am I doing this for? And they have this belief. They have a belief, they feel, I'm a part of this. I can play this game. Now, there's no difference in business and people think, hey, I deserve to be here. I'm a part of it. I've done my work and I continue to push forward. So there's kind of that want factor, and I've seen that in amongst a lot of players and coaches, seen in business people as well. They're intrinsically motivated, but they know and they've got clarity in their vision and where they're going. They really see it. And then they just keep refining it, and they just do it consistently well over and over again.
I think, as you said, sometimes you can be born with some certain talent. Yeah. This grit, say we call it grit, for example.
Yeah.
I think that some people do know that from a younger age, and it's just the way they are. They're brought up like that, or something in them has just sparked them that way.
Yeah.
I don't think I did have that early days, but I've identified now that that's what I want.
Yeah, great.
And I think that it is something that you can really teach and you can learn yourself. I don't think it's something that you go, oh, I don't have that, I'm never going to have it.
Yeah.
I think if you look in, you can identify things, you can look at yourself and say, fuck, I probably didn't get the best out of myself there.
Yep.
But then you start learning things, and if the penny drops with you, you can sort of turn into one of those people.
Yeah, that's a really nice way to put it. And I think and when the penny does drop, it's really being honest with yourself, really. I think and once you have that honesty where you're at, and you think, okay, this is what I'm prepared to do to get the best out of myself. But unfortunately, the penny doesn't drop. It's really having a good self-awareness, understanding your capabilities, understanding your constraints and what you need to do to go that next level. Unfortunately, some people just don't get that opportunity. So you need to have the right people that can actually help you kind of become more conscious of your strengths and constraints, but also help facilitate. They're not going to sugarcoat, but they're going to help drive that performance with you. And there is some discomfort associated with that as well. What do you want? That's the question. What do you really want, and what are you prepared to do to go to that next level?
Yeah. No, that's the question. I think I'm still on that, working that out. I'm sure so many people are still working that out. But once I suppose you can narrow in on that and really fix it in your mind, you'll do it. You will.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we're all on that journey, aren't we? We're all trying to find a better version of ourselves. How do we do it? What do we need to do? You got to find the recipe that works for you, not for everyone else, but for yourself, and then owning up to that.
But there's something massive I want to talk to you about, which I think will give huge context into how you are the way you are, which is, obviously determined, empathetic, and just so driven. Is something else you've done, a big factor in your life, is the Nick Foundation. Which is an incredible cause, which I've been blessed to go to a couple concerts of and be a part of. Can you talk us through the Nick Foundation?
Sure.
And how it came about?
Yeah, look, it's a small foundation. We've been going for it's over 11 years now. But 11 years ago, my son took his life. He was the eldest of 4 kids, just turned 20, and it really rocked us. Really made it difficult for us to push forward in life. You kind of just get into a stage where you just want to go in a cave and hide from everywhere, but going back to what you said before, we had a choice, and I remember saying this conversation with my wife Maria, and she said, "We've got a choice here. We can get better or get better with this." So we decided we're going to get better with this. And was it easy? No, it wasn't easy. And I'm not saying my setback was bigger than anyone else's setback, but when you do lose a loved one and a child, it's a lot of trauma on your family. But there was a responsibility on me and my family, and you're obligated to have joy in your life, and we wanted to have that. So we had to work on things, and all the things that I subscribe to now, today, and I've done for the last so many years. It's really helped me to get out of that pit of pain, and I look back, and it can enrich you as well. It gives you a really strong perspective of life. But also too, you get caught up thinking too far forward, but no, it's now the present. I'm enjoying this conversation with you now. And I'm happy to share this story, because I know that other families have lost loved ones as well. And mental health is on the rise. We know that, anxiety and depression as well. So, really basically as a family, we stuck together. I had some very strong friends that supported me as well. The club were very strong at the time too, that I was forever grateful for. And basically now, we've had 4 grandchildren now, which is lovely. A lot of things in our life that we've actually been able to achieve since his passing. And it's really that continual kind of moving forward. And so the Nick Foundation was born from that. I had 2 good friends, and we were having coffee. It wasn't long after Nick passed away, and I said, "But why don't we do something to help families or teenagers and parents that dealing with kids with challenges and so forth? So what can we do?" And one of them said, "Well, why don't we form a foundation?" I said, "Mate, I've got no idea what a foundation is. What are we talking about?" He goes, "Well, why don't we call it the Nick Foundation?" I said, "Oh, well, okay." Well, he goes, and then he came up with the acronym, or Nurture, Independence, Commitment, Knowledge. I said, "Okay, what is it going to look like?" He goes, "Well, first of all, just get people sharing their stories. They don't have to profess to be the experts, but share their stories about how they've overcome their challenges in life." And that's how we started. And then we got into the performing arts area. We ran shows, which you've seen. We had ran over 7 years, ran shows. And now pretty much what we do is we just sponsor families, kids, and their parent to go on these trips with us, where we take them to the Himalayas, to Everest Base Camp or Tassie, because we really believe, and what we found out, like a guest speaker's great. You go away, you feel warm and fuzzy and inspired. But really, you learn resilience indoors, but you build it outdoors. Yeah. Experiential. You've got to get amongst it. You've got to get out there, and what we spoke about before, that uncertainty. You've got to have that undistracted. You've got to invest yourself. There's got to be an element of risk. There's got to be a new environment. Those things are really important. Then it becomes a reference point for them going forward, and then they can really start to develop their resilience. You talked about before, we talked about, kind of Humphrey's Peak, you talk about the cold water stuff. There's things that still resonate with you. You've overcome those things. Young teenagers with their parents on a journey where it's tough, it's challenging. We do activities around that. They store that, then they go off and, okay, because there's going to be some setbacks and challenges. That's inevitable for everyone. But what things will put you in good stead? The tools that we talk about, we do mindfulness, we do a lot of reflection, visualization, positive talk, journaling. a whole host of things. I go on all day about it, but we don't say this is what you have to do. These are things that work. Have a go. Which ones you'd like to have a go? So basically, it comes down to habit formation. Good, healthy habits that set you up to be able to tolerate what's coming at us in life.
Resilience, and it's something you're never going to be like good at it all the time.
No.
I think like I sort of feel like I've become a more resilient person, but then something will happen. I'll be like, fuck, like I'm not resilient at that time, but it snaps me back into being resilient quicker. Would you say it's a skill? It's a habit itself?
Yeah, that's interesting. It is a habit. It's a continuum. I think it's one of those things that we have to continually do. It's not to the point you get to that mountain, you're resilient. No, there's times you're going to feel that fragility. You're going to feel that vulnerability. It's fine. It's accepting that. But what are the things you're going to go back to that enables you to keep that momentum and going forward? That is the key. You know, that really, in a way, I go back to 11 years ago. I felt like I wanted to desensitise with pain, get on the piss, go in the cave, but no, I don't want to do that because I have a responsibility to myself, to my life, and to my loved ones, and to work as well. So it's kind of like, okay, it's that continuum. Resilience is you've got to keep working at it. It's like your health, and what is it works for you. So really, all of a sudden, and over time, you form these habits. They're ingrained. It's just part of you, and then you've got those formed. Then you might think, oh, okay, I might start to get me out of the comfort zone and start applying some other things as well. If it gives you a better version of yourself and it gives you the ability to connect to yourself, why wouldn't you do it? Because I really think that we can become disconnected through pain. And then when that happens, we don't have the ability to connect with others. Because really, that's what life's about. It's about relationships, really. So, but I think when you have a true kind of connection with yourself, you have the ability to really connect to others. So it's kind of like it is a continuum. You've got to keep working at it all the time. And it's like, does it get easier? Probably not.
No.
You know, it does. I'd have to say, like I've been doing mindfulness now for nearly 12 years, and I don't miss a beat. I kind of exercise every day. Does it get easier? Not really. Do I like doing it? Not all the time. To be honest, and I eat well and stuff like that. But what it is, it's the outcome, how I feel after it. That's the most important. And I think that's what resilience. And you're right. When you admit, I'm feeling a bit fragile today, that's okay. Then you've got to have some compassion to yourself. And you're kind of like, that's okay. But I'll move through this.
I think with resilience as well, and one thing I want to get your opinion on is resilience. I think is sometimes forced for you because of an event. Say what happened with your family. Someone might go through something that's it sort of forces you into it and forces you to look at it and be more resilient. Is there a way that you can actually practice resilience proactively and actually build yourself up so that when bad things happen, which is going to happen, you can be better at it?
Yeah.
Like, can you be proactive with it? Is there studies that you can do? Or
Of course there is. It's practicing these habits on a regular basis that enables you to get into the moment and not conjure up and ruminate and think what things are going to happen to you. What are those practices? Well, basic things like get good sleep patterns. Eat well, do mindfulness, surround yourself with positive people that can support you, feel connected to people that you love. Show compassion. And then also there's a whole host of things, but it's doing these things regularly, not waiting until when that shit hits the fan, you think, shit, what do I need to do? How am I going to get out of this pit of pain? What am I going to do? But these things I've been doing, I keep doing these things. Just getting out of your bed. Just get out of your bed, moving forward that day. And start small, tiny steps. I think it's got to start at a young age, and then it's kind of like building upon that because we know it's going to come at us at some stage. But we can learn. When we have discomfort, we learn. We reflect. What do I learn about that? Yeah, okay, that was pretty painful. What do I need to do to get me out of that? So you go back to those kind of habits that get you out of it. So really, in a way, yes, you can build resilience.
Yeah.
You definitely can build it, and I think but we have to practice it. Is it easy to practice? Not necessarily, but it's good. You've got to be able to do it regularly. It's consistency of doing it all the time.
I think it sparks something that you said a few times when people are trying to build good habits in yourself.
Yep.
You go from people who maybe don't do a thing, don't practice anything, they don't have a routine, but then they go, you know what, next month I'm going to go to the gym every day.
Yep.
And it sort of falls away because it's unattainable. You can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
I've heard you say something really cool about try and start one good habit a week.
Yeah.
And then the next week build on to 2 good habits. So it's a slower, you can start small and build
Start
them.
small.
What advice would you give to someone on that?
Look, we're really big on
And sorry, this is through Resilience Builders.
Yeah. So basically that's what we do. We teach online, to corporates, to schools, and then, we do face-to-face stuff as well. But this is basically what we're talking about, micro behaviours, habit formation, how we actually instill that into people. First and foremost, I think what's really crucial, you've got to understand why. Why do you want to do it? I was dealing with a banker 3 years ago, and he's going to the Royal Commission, and he says, I sleep terrible, butters. I said, how many hours a night would you be sleeping? 4 hours. I said, right, okay. I said, why do you want to get better sleep? I just feel shit out all the time. Now, come on, why? And he said, I've got no idea. I just need better sleep. I said, you come back and find out why. And he came back and told me, he said, I want to become a better dad. I said, how's that going to help you? I've got more energy and I can connect with my kid. I said, there you go. I said, there's your why. So once you know your why, and this is not my quote, this is Friedrich Nietzsche's quote, once you know your why, you can bear any how. Now, Simon Sinek talks about it as well, but it's so important. It goes back to your vision. Why do you want to do it? Okay. Then you go through, okay, if you get better sleep, how are you going to feel? I feel more energized. Great, that's a good outcome. Okay, so what are your obstacles? Phone's going off all the time. Okay, what do you need to do? I put it in another room. Can you do that? Yeah, I could do that. Okay. So, could you achieve 4 hours to 4 hours 15? An extra 15 minutes? Yeah, I could do that. Slow, small little tiny increments. And then once you start to build those, then you go, because you're right, try and go to the gym every day. Cognitively, it's just too hard. It's too arduous. So you've got to make the steps small. Then you piggyback the good habits against other habits. Now, what I mean by that just is a cue and trigger to enable that habit to form. So, for example, in the morning you get up, what do? Check your phone.
Yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people do that. What do we do that for? Get out, put your feet on the carpet, say, hey, it's going to be a good day for me today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have a glass of water, do 5 push-ups, whatever it may be. But that's a habit. We don't even know it. So really, in a way, it's how we piggyback habits against good habits. So basically, his habit would be, when he goes to bed, put that phone in another room. Right, and use an old kind of fashioned alarm clock if you need be. So it's got to be low friction. Now, what I mean by low friction, it is a low friction so you can actually form that habit quite effectively. So Netflix has done it well. What happens at the end of the episode? What does it do?
Starts again.
Of course, it's low friction. Makes you want to watch the next episode. When we're forming habits, it's got to be low friction. So repetition is important. It's got to be piggyback with something else. You need to reward yourself. This is really important. When you do it, you need to reward yourself. What is the outcome going to feel like when I've done this? When I've done this exercise? You visualize the outcome. You're going to feel more energized, feel good about myself. Okay, then you need to be conscious of what things, like obstacles, they're going to actually block your way. That's really important. You've got to be realistic. It's not just positive thinking. No, you've got to actually think of what are your obstacles that's going to stop you from actually achieving that. So I would recommend, if anyone forms a better habit, might be saying, okay, I want to get more water into me throughout the day. I have 1 extra glass of water a day. Start with that, and you build upon that. Success builds success. There's no question. And then we start to form these habits regularly, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's exercise, having less sugar, less alcohol, whatever it may be. We've got habits we're not even conscious of. We brush our teeth twice a day. Hopefully you do. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we do that regularly. It's like mindfulness. Why wouldn't you do that twice a day? We look after our teeth. Why wouldn't we look after our brain? It's really one of those things. It's forming these habits. We do it, and it's compound interest over time. That consistency over time, we make these adaptations and positive benefits. So really, I think the habit formation, New Year's Eve kind of resolution, everyone's talking about, what are you going to do, bucks this year? You're going to, okay, all right. But it's sticking to it. You need some accountability as well. That's really important. You need some accountability. And if you've got some support around you too, that will help as well. So there's kind of there's a whole process of steps that enables you to actually develop these habits. There's some really good behavioural scientists that the research shows strong support in forming these habits. BJ Fogg is one. You can probably check him out. I think Wendy Wood's another one as well. There's a lot forming these habits. These are researchers have shown what are the sequences you need to do or the process you need to do to be able to stick a habit.
I love it. And I think the biggest thing that resonates with me in that, and I think people need to take on board, is the fact that you do start small. Yeah. Start small and when you do one, you'll feel so good about yourself.
Yep.
And then because you've done it. If you chop off too much and try and do 10 things in a day, you'll probably have the reverse effect. You won't get the 10 done and you'll feel shit, then you just give up.
Of course, because that's when we start to self-sabotage ourselves, that negative talk. But when you start getting success, you go back and reflect, what did I do well there? Great. What could I actually do to get better here? So you start to ask these kind of self-coaching questions. And all of a sudden, hey, I've got this nailed. I'm actually doing well. It does take a little bit of time. Probably takes about 2 months to actually form a habit. But it's no different to forming a habit like talking positive to yourself. Smiling to your colleagues more regularly. You know, are you smiling to your boys?
Always.
Hopefully. Yeah. But you know what I mean? That's a habit. Posture is another one. The speed that we eat. All the little things, it's being conscious of what you're doing. And I think that's really, once we start become conscious of that, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, I can do it. If it becomes arduous and it's cognitive energy you're using all the time, geez, you're going to drop off.
I think, speaking of habits, and one that you reminded me of, that honestly this has probably been a big factor that you've helped with me, is my language and the way not that I talk, but I talk to myself. Right. And I always say something, you know, I was really bad at this as a kid, but I'd be like, oh, fuck this, I can't do that.
Yes.
But now, whenever I do speak to myself, and my fiancée Justine really gets angry at this because I'll pick her up on it as well, because it helps me then, you know, reform the habit. Is I'll say, like, I'm not there yet, I'm not doing this yet, I haven't achieved this yet, instead of saying I'm never going to do this.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's something with the language side of things. And even it's so formed in my head now that I'll hear someone say something and nearly want to, it just hits me again in the head, but I won't pull them up on it, obviously, because that's the way that they want to do.
Yep.
But just that language and the way you talk to yourself, like being your best friend, it's something that I've looked into, is like, you know, treat yourself the way that you treat your best mate.
Well, that's right.
If your best mate's saying, fuck, I can't do this, I can't do it, what are you going to do? You're going to say, mate, you can do this, you can get it done.
Why would you speak to yourself like that? We would never speak to your best friend like that. Well, what a great point. I mean, I think that's the thing, is that we can really hijack ourselves with the narrative that we use to ourselves. But your closest loved ones, you wouldn't be telling them, mate, you're shit at that, you can't do that.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? And so really that is a habit in itself. So the key is checking in and catching yourself. It's self-regulation. It's catching yourself before, hey, I'm talking quite negatively here. How do you get into that moment and anchoring into the moment? So what do you do when you get to the point where, hey, I'm talking a bit of shit about myself here? What do you do to stop that?
Well, I think now it's a habit that I can catch it out. And I think, don't get me wrong, there's always times where I'm going to be in a shit mood, but I get into it quicker and then I can snap back. And as stupid as this sounds, and it sounds stupid when you say it out loud, but you just start saying to yourself, like, mate, you're a legend.
Yeah.
You're actually really, you know, you're really good. You are, you know, you can do this. Like, you just actually pump yourself up. And it's funny how quickly you change back into it. And sometimes you just laugh. You just go, oh, fuck, what am I doing this for? But it does just snap you out of it. And you say, mate, like, you know, you're a good bloke. You got good mates. You're a good friend to this. You're a good partner.
Yep.
And yeah, I adapt that thing of being my own best friend and being able to not rely on someone to snap me out of it, but I can snap myself out of it.
No, I like that. I think I can sense there's an element of gratitude coming in there. You know, I think that, and you start to kind of love yourself. I think that's really important. I mean, you know, if we're suffering in our world, you know, and we haven't got our backyard sorted, how do we expect to get others sorted? You know,
Exactly.
so we have to love ourselves first to get that. And it sounds a bit cheesy, but really that's what it is. You got to be gentle on yourself, and you got to look at the things you're doing well, because if you keep compounding the negative, it will manifest.
If you say negative things are going to come, and that's one thing I've definitely learned. You are what you attract. Yeah. If you say good things are coming, good things will come. But if you say shit things are coming, you know, people always say, like, and you know this, there's like footy, you go, fuck this shit's coming. Well, that's going to come to you. But if you sort of look at it positively, then the positive will come back.
Yes.
But as I want to do some more sessions at Resilience Builders.
Yes.
How can we get involved with it? So anyone today can actually...
Yeah, anyone. So resiliencebuilders.com.au.
That'll be in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So look, what it is, it's... so we've got a group going to Tassie, you know, in April, but unfortunately that's sold out. We've got one in early August doing the Overland. That's sold out as well. So Oh no, it's just I think once COVID's over, it's just gone bananas. But we're gonna actually roll one out down in Tassie Cradle Mountain in September. So that's gonna, I think that's online now, and then we run our online stuff, then face-to-face workshops, and we do a lot of one-on-one coaching too with people. So
teams, corporates, businesses, individuals can all go to this.
Yeah, of course.
That one in September. Talk with what would you actually do on that camp?
This will because we're getting a lot of interest of families. So like a mum or a dad with a teenager, like 13 years upwards. I mean, look, they could be 22, 23 years of age. Really good because you're in that undistracted environment. They're not on their phones, which is wonderful. You're connecting with other people as well. You're doing things that you probably wouldn't have done in the past. You're going to do some cold water immersion. We'll do a lot of mindfulness there. We do activities at night where you start to search yourself. You're really going into an environment where you're going to lose your mind, but find your soul. Now that's a cliche, but it's kind of like, but it's true. You kind of when you're, and Tassie's beautiful. Cradle Mountain is fantastic. When we do our trips in the Himalayas, the first 2 or 3 days, some of the teenagers, this sucks. Why is that? Oh, no Wi-Fi. But the 4th day, they're talking to other parents, talking to other kids, and they're immersed. They're in that undistracted environment. They're invested into that. It's a new environment. There is a perceived risk as well. But obviously, the health and safety is our number one priority. We've got to make sure we get them to that point where there feels that kind of perceived exertion, perceived risk. And what happens, that becomes a reference point for them. So we do some assessment as well on them, and on the mum and the dad and their teenage child as well. And that becomes a reference point for them going forward too. So it gives a little bit of rigour and objectivity around where they're at too.
Unbelievable, mate. I think I couldn't urge people to go on that more, because we were chatting off air before about Resilience Builders and what it's about, and I think all the things that I've been blessed to learn about in this space have come from these trips, and it's nearly doing a pre-season camp objective, but for an everyday family. Yeah,
and this becomes like, I took my teenage daughter on this trip to the Himalayas and went to the Everest base camp. We did some climbs above base camp. I would have to say she may listen to this, but I think life-changing for her. I had a niece, I had a nephew on there as well. There's a group of 26, 27 people on this trip. It becomes a wonderful reference point. And that's where I'd love to get you on one of these trips.
I'd love to,
yeah. So, and we can go high if you want. We can get you into the death zone if you're interested.
That's getting high.
you might think, "Butters, what are you doing to us?" But no, seriously, I think it really what happens. We get caught up in the everyday kind of lifestyle here. But when you're over there, and our Sherpas, they're so altruistic, they're so giving. It just you come away and think, oh, that was a fantastic experience. So we can't wait to get back over there once COVID's kind of been under control. We'll get over there maybe later this year or early next year.
It was the one thing I think when I played footy that I thought, I finished footy now, I'm not going to have to exert myself ever again and feel, put myself in these positions where I feel depleted. But now it's the one thing I probably miss the most, it's that feeling of actually being vulnerable and being like, I actually have nothing else to give.
So what do you do now to get yourself out of that comfort zone? What do you do as a regular routine to squeeze yourself? What do you do?
I think the only thing I do that's physical is I go to the gym, but there's no way I'm working as hard as I was when I was playing footy. But the one thing I do challenge myself in now is my work ethic in my work. I feel like I've never worked harder in my life. So that is the exertion I get. Like people might think this is just a podcast and we record it, we press play and not, but there's probably a million other things that go on, behind closed doors. But mentally, I'm in a very good space, but there are some things that I definitely would like to click onto.
Yeah. And I think that's what it is. It's kind of finding what things can you do that takes you out of the comfort zone, because if we always want comfort, we're going to get despair. There's no question. There's no question on that. It's the harder choices in life will give you an easier life. Easy choices will give you a harder life. So it's kind of, that's not, I heard Tim Ferriss say that, so I'm just copying his quote. But I do subscribe to that adversity element. So whether it's cold water immersion, having cold showers on a daily basis, whether it's meditation, whatever it may be, getting yourself, you've been there. You've experienced discomfort. Why wouldn't you go back there again? Just keep doing it, because it translates back into what you do in your business and in life. Start thinking about what can you do now to build a different version of Dylan Buckley.
It was funny you say that now, because I was actually speaking to Sam before and he asked me a few questions about you and we were chatting, and I said the one thing I actually still do, and I don't even think you might remember you telling me this, but after dinner you'd tell me to go for a walk.
Yeah.
And when I go for a walk, don't wear a jumper. So in the middle of winter,
yes,
you know, like don't wear a jumper when you go out, because that little percent you might get of the walk, you might get 1% more if you're cold, and then your mind knows that you've been cold, so you're going a bit more.
Good on you. Well
so
done.
now
That's
when
good.
I like go out for dinner with Jazz and she's like, you know, bring a jumper, and I'm like, nah, I don't need a jumper.
Yeah.
I still do that to this day.
That's what it is you're conscious of the cold. We can create a narrative around the cold, but no, that's okay. Because you know at some stage you can get warm again. And really, this is the heightened level of mindfulness, and I really think that it does help us, because when discomfort is upon us, we can get a narrative that can magnify the discomfort, or we can actually we acknowledge it, but we let it go in and go out. So good on you for doing that. That's great.
Yeah, there's definitely a few that are in the head that will definitely come to me. But Butters, I honestly can't thank you enough, mate, for coming on the show. I implore anyone to really check out Resilience Builders, and mate, I'm definitely coming on one of them soon if you don't sell out too quick.
I might be able to squeeze you on, mate.
We'll make sure we do, because I'd love to go. I might bring my dad along as well, and that'd be good. And then also anyone else who wants to know, please check out the Resilience Builders website and get on a trip.
Good on you, Dylan. And well done to you, mate. It's always great to see past players that find a passion. I mean that. It was players that, you know, I still keep in contact from North days, but I see they've actually got a passion and they're fulfilled. And I can see that in you. And it really touches me, because I think footy is a vehicle to set you up for life. And when you see actual players actually finding something that they love doing, it's really gratifying. So well done to you, mate.
Thank you, mate. I couldn't have done it without your support, so thank you very much. Cheers. This episode of the Dylan Friends podcast is brought to you by Dr. V Energy. Alrighty, my friends, I want to let you in on a little secret that's been keeping my body feeling bloody fantastic throughout the week. It's Dr. V Energy drinks. After a big gym session, or after I let my hair down on the weekend with a few friends having a couple of cordials, I drink Dr. V Energy Bender Mender to help me recover, bounce back, and get back to performing at my best. I'm telling you now, there is no artificial ingredients in sight. It's 100% natural and made with wild herbs and berries that have been used for centuries to heal and protect the liver and kidneys. The ingredients are even hand-picked from a Siberian forest, I kid you not. You do not get more wholesome than this, my friends. Bender Mender is available at Easy Marts, independent IGAs, or online at www.drv.com.au. Use the promo code #DylanFriends for 15% off the online store. So be better and drink Dr. V with me.